Okay, so to create this Happy Mail folder, I first started by cutting up a 6.5 by 11 sheet of craft paper, and then I created 2 score lines going 2 inches in from the right side and then 4.25 inches from the left side. And then I went straight into the decorating. I picked up an old dictionary from the thrift store for like a couple bucks, and I use this to decorate. I use it as ephemera and collaging. I cut out a strip of it a little bit smaller than the outer flap just so that there's a little tiny border around the outer flap and stuck it on to the outer flap. Wow, I said outer flap many times in that last sentence. You may use a tape runner. I just use a glue stick because I find them to be, yes, messier, but a lot cheaper. I found this strip of paper in my scrap paper box and thought it would look really cute as a belly band. So I began to glue it on my folder, first starting from the outer flap and then the back of the folder, and then moving on to the front of the folder, and then continuing to the first inner flap. It gets a little tricky to make it straight, so before the glue completely dries, just shimmy it a little just to make sure everything lines up perfectly. I don't mean to say perfectly, I mean to say imperfectly, but do the best you can. I cut out another piece of paper from the dictionary, and this one is going to be the lining for the inner sides of the folder, I guess you could say. I cut this out to be a little smaller than the entire folder just so that there is a border around the edges just to give it a little bit more dimension. I recommend only gluing the middle section of the piece of paper first just so you have a little bit more control over the alignment of the paper, and then flipping over the right side and gluing that down and then doing the left side. Make sure to use a scrap of paper underneath whatever you are gluing just so you don't get glue on the things that you don't want to get glue on. If you are using a glue stick, you will sometimes have to go back and see if anything is lifting up around the edges and just try to glue those down as well. Kind of like how I am doing here. As you can see, we are making progress on our beautiful folder. Next, we want to create 2 hole punches on the outer flap of the folder. I am using my We Are Memory Keepers all-in-one paper cutter, which comes with a hole punch. I lined both of the holes a little bit of a distance away from the strip of paper that is lighting down the middle of the folder, and then I set 2 eyelets within both of the punched holes. Now, I don't have an eyelet setter or an eyelet tool, so I just used a hammer and a Phillips head screw thing. I don't know what they're called. It might not be as clean, but hey, it works for me. And then resting the back eyelet on. So the way you want to do this is by putting in the front eyelet first, and then gently hammering the Phillips head within the back and rotating after a few hits until you get a few dents in throughout the circular part of the eyelet, and then finishing off by hammering without the Phillips head in place. Just make sure to have a piece of wood underneath or something so that you don't damage the eyelet or the table that you are working on. Next, we just want to sew on our button. This will act as a way to keep our folder closed with a piece of twine, which we'll go into a little bit later. You can use any kind of thread here. I just used the one that comes in one of those little personal sewing kits. I wrapped it around about twice and then simply just put a knot in the back to keep it secure. I knotted it a couple times, maybe even 3 times, just for a little extra stability. And then for even more secureness, I went in with a hot glue gun and only glued in the right side of the button. Do not do the left side yet because we are going to do something with it later. Now we can get into the pockets of the inner lining of the folder. I actually pre-cut these pockets just because this video would be so incredibly long if I didn't do that. Essentially, the way you want to create these pockets is by measuring the area you want the pocket to cover, and then adding a 1/4 or more inch of paper on the left, right, and bottom edges of the pocket. This extra paper is going to be the parts that we actually glue down. You also want to cut off the corner edges of the left and right bottom folds, just so everything is a little bit neater and so you don't have extra paper that you're going to have to glue down. And then go ahead and apply glue on all 3 of the flaps. Make sure you add a couple extra swipes of glue here, just because sometimes it will flip up a little bit, and then go ahead and secure it in the center of your folder. Notice that I made the center pocket the size of the center section of the folder. Now we can work on our second pocket. I made this one a little bit shorter in width than the first pocket. I will be gluing our second pocket directly on top of our first pocket, just lining up the left edges of both. Layering your pockets is actually a great way to get extra room, so you have more space to put in stickers, ephemera, or whatever else you're gonna put into this space. Plus, it gives your folder a lot more dimension, which I think looks really nice. Next, I cut out a rectangular sheet of cardstock where I added in 2 slits going in 1/4 inch from the top and the bottom. And then I cut out another piece of cardstock the size of the width of the slits and the height of the first cardstock, which acted as my ribbon swatches. And I was able to slide it right into the first cardstock, as you can see here. You can use this technique to add washi tapes or even twine. I just used ribbon here. Now we are going to work on adding a few pockets to the first inner flap of the folder. Another tip I have in making these pockets is try to make them a little smaller in height than you would think. The reason for this is because I like when the contents of whatever is going into these compartments show up a little bit. Like, I don't want them to be hidden, just because I think showing the contents kind of gives the folder a little bit more of an aesthetic appeal, and it looks nicer, and I'm gonna say this word again, but it adds dimension. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, well, whatever, I did my best. Next, we are going to be creating an envelope, and I am using my We Are Memory Keepers mini envelope maker. I cut out a piece of paper that is 4 by 4 in measurement, and I made the first punch at 2 1/8, I believe. I highly recommend getting one of these punches from them or a different company. I got this one from Joann's. I used a 40% off coupon, and I think it only cost me like $8. I use it all the time. I've had it for about 8 months now, and it still works good as new. I use these punches to create pouches and envelopes and send them out to everyone in my Patreon community. I use them for collaging. I make envelopes for holidays and birthdays, and no, I am not sponsored by them. I just really like these punches. Another way to make a pocket is by using vellum paper. The vellum is interesting because whatever you put inside will be visible since the vellum is semi-transparent. I like to put buttons or beads or anything that kind of looks a little organic and is 3-dimensional inside of vellum. That way you don't just see the bulkiness of the pocket, but instead you get to see why is it bulky. Okay, next we are going to work on the inner lining of the closure flap. Both of these pockets are big enough to add in a washi sampler and some baby ephemera, which we will get into a little bit later. I tried to make the color palette and the patterns of all of the paper that I chose kind of cohesive. So everything is of course a little bit muted, pastel-y. So I chose pinks, purples, yellows, and definitely more on the neutral and organic earthy tone side. Because well, if you know me, then you know I love those color ranges and that whole vintage look. And now we can actually begin to add in all of our package contents. I mean, we still have a couple things to do when it comes to finishing off the folder design, but we can't do that until the end. So let's have a little bit of fun and add in all of the stuff. The biggest compartment is the center compartment, and it consists of art prints, sticker sheets, mini sticker sheets, business cards that I personally designed. The highest tier members in my Patreon community will be receiving a version of this exact Happy Mail folder for the month of September. Like I mentioned earlier, the pockets on the inner flap will consist of baby ephemera and a little washi sampler. The front center pocket will consist of only vinyl stickers that I myself have designed, as well as some that I received from Notebook Therapy and other sticker shops, stationery shops like Paper World Shop. The mini envelope will have other stickers, not particularly vinyl stickers, but journaling stickers that are not waterproof. Some of these stickers are my designs and other ones are from other stationery shops as well. Inside the vellum pocket goes a large vintage button, and the 2 pockets that are on the first flap will consist of tags, labels, die cuts, ephemera, junk journal content, stamped cardstock. These are things that I made or I collected over the years, and I will be distributing them by color. So the bottom pocket will consist of all of the lighter toned ephemera, and then the top pocket will have all of the darker toned content. If you notice, I am placing everything so that you can kind of see all of the contents and nothing thing is really hidden behind the other, nor is it completely hidden within the pocket. And then on the top right hand corner of the flap, I will be sticking on some Pantone sticker sheets with some grid washi. And that is all for the contents for the inside of the folder. I did want to add one more thing on the inside of the folder, but we will do that at the end. So now let's get to how we're going to tie the whole thing together. So I didn't really measure the twine, I just kind of wrapped it around and took an estimated guess, making sure I left enough room for the knot and the bow. And then I folded the twine exactly in half and slid it behind the left side of the button. To keep the button and the twine securely in place, I inserted hot glue behind the button and then held the button down while the glue dried. I wrapped the twine around the back and then towards the front. And now you can use anything here, but I just had some vintage, I don't know what these are called, like I guess you can say embellishments. Yeah, I like that. I had some vintage metal embellishments laying around that I laced the twine through just so I can keep everything in place and secure, and both ends of the twine went through the two eyelets that we created earlier, and I had enough room left to create a knot and a bow. Now let's flip the entire folder over so we can work on the back. Now I didn't film how to make this folder because I actually made them in advance, and I really didn't feel like making another one because I'm just going through major PMS right now and I just feel tired and exhausted. So I do apologize for that, but they are not difficult to make at all, and maybe I can create a small reel where I show you how to make it and post it on my Instagram, so just keep a lookout for that. Anyways, you do need to use a hot glue gun to secure this on the back because a glue stick and a tape runner will not keep it stuck. I've tried. Trust me, just use the hot glue gun. And then you can put in whatever you like. I put in a bunch of different kinds of ephemera. Everything from linen, burlap, vellum, patterned paper, vintage paper, handmade paper, textured paper, and cardstock. Now let's open up our folder again to add our last item. I created a mini envelope using vellum paper. I filled it with some sequence beading, and I am securing it to the envelope with a journaling clip. That was the last item for the inside of the folder. Now we can close the folder up again so we can add the final touches. Earlier I had made some stamped linen, burlap, and a label with a quote that I really like on it, and here they are. I will actually be clipping them onto the twine with this mini clothes hanger, and then I will just add a stamp from this sticker sheet that I created on the bottom left front of the folder. And then to finish it off, I will very carefully insert some dried foliage behind the metal embellishment and the twine. Now for the packaging, I am using glassine bags from Paper Mart to protect our little Happy Mail folder. I'm adding the name of the recipient and the date this was created and closing the whole thing together by securing the label on the top of the package. I actually made these labels on Procreate and printed them out myself, and they were made for this exact purpose, and I love them so much. Next, we will find another type of button. This one has 4 holes inside of it, and we will get another piece of twine. I laced the twine through the button, making sure I got it through all of the holes. I did pre-measure the twine, making sure it fit over the package, leaving room for a knot and a bow. Then I placed the button on the front center of the package and wrapped the twine around the longer edge of the package. I crossed the twine in the back and brought them towards the front along the opposite edges of the package. And then I tied one knot followed by a bow knot, which fit perfectly snug behind the button. Or I guess imperfectly, I should say, because nothing is perfect. And here is a clip of the final look. These packages take a long time to make, and I put my love and time and energy into them. It is always such a bittersweet feeling to see them go to their new homes, because on one hand, I spent a lot of time with them and I became attached to them. Sometimes it feels like all of my insides are inside of the art that I create. My thoughts, my feelings, the experiences that I'm having at that particular time. So it does feel a little sad watching it go. It honestly feels like a piece of me is literally leaving me. But then where I find gratitude in things like this is knowing that this is going to a home that deserves my work. Someone will get to experience the joy and happiness of opening every little knot and every little pocket using these stickers and artworks that I created in their artwork, in their bullet journal or notebook. It's a beautiful thing that connects us together, something that is worth getting attached attached and then letting it all go. And for that reason, the life of an artist or a creator is a vulnerable one. So let's remember that every time we buy from or support a creator.